So we'll get started.
You made me a host as well, right?
Yes. All right, the participants are starting to come in the room. We can see that as they all just kind of, as their computers start to turn in, they can see us and hear us. Well, we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll just talk about what we're going to do today. And everybody, obviously, this is the Gans lecture here for the Pacific Association of Pediatric Surgeons 54th annual meeting. The second one that's virtual. We sure hope the last one that's virtual because we want to see people in person next time. So thank you all for being here, and should be quite exciting for our Gans lecture. The Gans lecture, for those of you who may not have been to a PAPS meeting before, is something that was started a long time ago, and the idea is to hear about something other than pediatric surgery. We're sitting here knee deep in it for 3 or 4 days, and so we want to learn about something else. Obviously, being the singing society that we try to be, but we don't really have any talent, most of us anyway. We thought this year, like, hey, let's kind of try to find someone who may have that ability that we are all perhaps yearning to see or have or whatever in our own lives. So anyway, I am pleased to introduce for today's Gans lecture, this year's Gans lecturer, someone who is just absolutely phenomenal, amazing career. And here we're going to learn about what she does, how the theater industry works, and so forth. It should be quite exciting. Those of you who may have seen Hamilton, I bet most of you have. Obviously, it's a huge sensation, first off Broadway, then on Broadway, and now even a film of one of the performances or a couple of performances put together. So without further ado, I just want to quickly introduce Marilyn Butler and Sebastian King, my co-moderators for this session. And ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Broadway star, Phillipa Sue.
Hello.
Hey, Phillipa, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me in this virtual space this evening.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. Well, we're very excited to have you. It's very, very well. Let's start there. What time is it where you're at?
I'm in New York, and it's 9 o'clock. And of course, we turn the clocks back, so it gets dark around 4:35 now. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, how long have you lived in New York? You've been there for a long time, or is it obviously it's the place where the action happens for being in the industry?
Yeah, I've lived here. Let's see, for about 13 years now. Yeah, I've lived all over the city. I went to school here. That was when I first came. And I've been here ever since, pretty much, with a couple little hiatuses in California, Toronto, places that I've worked. But yeah, I'm based in New York.
Excellent. Well, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and basically was there my whole life until I came here to New York. Nice.
And obviously your talents are incredible. Everybody's seen you and heard you. It's just amazing. And it goes into so many different areas of theater and everything. How did you get involved in music? When did that all start?
I've been playing music for a very long time. It started, I took piano lessons as a kid. My grandmother was a pianist, and was a very accomplished one at that. And yeah, I started taking lessons when I was pretty young. I want to say like 6 or 7. And
wow.
I took dance, and so there was a lot of musicality in that. And it wasn't until I had a piano teacher who I really loved, and she moved away, and I sort of found a new teacher and kind of lost interest in playing piano, but I still wanted to do music. And my parents suggested I do voice lessons because I had sort of been singing around the house, for my whole childhood. So they thought that maybe, this would be sparking my interest.
So your parents heard your talent and said, "Hey, we gotta steer this girl."
Well, no, not really. They were just sort of like, "What do you love to do?"
Good.
I loved to sing, and they wanted me to, they thought it would be, useful and enriching to have some sort of musical background. At one point I thought I'd maybe join band. At one point I thought I'd maybe play the French horn. I was just really trying to figure out what I liked. And I was so lucky to have parents that found the arts to be important. And at the same time, they were never pushing me to do anything. They just sort of let me find the things that brought me the most joy. And that's the path that they helped me walk down.
Wow, that's incredible. Was there any performances that really, like, grade school, high school, whatever, that you remember the most when you were just getting started?
Oh gosh.
I heard it was Phillipa in Pippin once.
Yes, I did a production of Pippin when I was a sophomore in high school. And I played the leading player, who's sort of a narrator type in this production. And I auditioned for plays, like the school plays, when I was in middle school. Before that, I had taken these voice lessons, and because of that, my teacher started introducing me to musicals and musical theater, and I think it all sort of like tied in together because I was a very imaginative young person, and I loved dance and I loved music, and I obviously loved acting to a certain extent because I was just constantly pretending and being in my own brain and finding the joy and play really in using my imagination. So it kind of made sense.
Wonderful. All right.
Phillipa, I was going to ask, so you ended up at Juilliard, is that right?
Yeah, so I was in high school and auditioning for theater programs, and I got into Juilliard and I decided to go there.
Wow. So, and is that a usual, because obviously Juilliard's, so famous, and most of the people that are coming into your class, are they coming out of high school, or have they gone and done a sort of a theatre major, as a college graduate, and then they're coming in a little bit older? Like, were you unusual, at the age that you were going in?
Not unusual, but the Juilliard program, when I was going there, and it still is, it's very unique of its kind, because this is an acting conservatory program, but within it there are undergrads and there are grads who are in the same graduating acting class.
Oh, wow.
So I was there, getting a liberal arts BFA education, whereas there were other people there, and at the time that I was there, it was not an MFA, it was actually just a diploma, like a diploma program. And so as a young person coming in and having to do a liberal arts education, I actually had to have, like 4 to 6 more hours of class per week, on top of, all of the classes we were doing and rehearsals we were doing at night. So it was a very immersive experience, and it was the perfect place for me because I really wanted just to completely throw myself into the work and the craft, and getting to be in a class of 18 people where half of them are 18 coming out of high school, and half of them have lived their lives in some capacity, either went to college or didn't go to college and worked in the industry, or have been working in the industry for 10 plus years and now are coming in their mid to late 30s as students again. I think it really was incredibly informative and useful to have a mixed bag of different experiences and people and cultures and nationalities to come together and be in a program together.
Yeah, amazing. And the impetus to apply for Juilliard as an 18-year-old, was that a teacher, or we're all teachers in as surgeons, we're teaching our trainees and all the time, and love fostering sort of the young and up and coming talent. So did you have a teacher who said to you, this is where you've got to go, or this is where I went and this is where I think you should be? How does that happen?
No, I mean, I had a lot of friends who were also auditioning for schools, and they had mentioned, oh, you gotta audition for Juilliard. You might as well, you're auditioning for all these other places, and at the time, there's I'm from Chicago, I'm from a suburb outside of Chicago, and they do these auditions where you can go to a hotel and all of the schools are auditioning at the same
Oh,
time.
wow.
So, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna go on 10 auditions in a day, you might as well squeeze in Juilliard because you're there and who knows what could happen. So yeah.
And what the process of that, have you prepared a soliloquy, or have you prepared a couple of pieces to sing, or as an 18-year-old, what do you pick for that moment?
They asked for one contemporary monologue, and they asked for one classical monologue. And I chose a monologue from a Shakespeare monologue. I don't remember which play it was right now, but I'll think about it.
Yep.
And then the second one was from Misalliance, George Bernard Shaw. And, technically he's kind of classic, but he kind of rides that line between classic and contemporary. So that was my contemporary choice, playing the role of Hypatia. And so they also asked if you felt comfortable singing or you wanted to sing, you could prepare a couple bars of music to sing a cappella in the room if you wanted to. Yeah. Wow.
Because we all sort of, obviously know you so clearly as a singer. So I imagine that's, you would go first and foremost with that.
Well, no, I mean, it's not a musical program. It's a straight theater program. And we did do singing classes there and some dance classes and movement classes for sure. But this is, a very classical theater training program that I went into, and it was the greatest, most difficult, craziest experience of my young life. And it was a really good way to launch into New York and the community there, and just to have a foothold from the get-go, because a lot of kids are going to school, training, and then they have to move to New York, and that's a huge shift for a lot of young people. But I had already been there for 4 years, so it felt like home, going out into the world. So
yeah, that's great. Well, I'll hand over to Marilyn because I know she's got a few questions.
All right. Well, we're going to pivot over to Hamilton, and
she's got the hat. The hat on the back.
Of course.
John, what do you have, John?
He's in the room. He's in the room. That's all that matters.
He's in the room where it's happening.
That's right.
That's it.
Well,
I'm not throwing away my shot.
Not throwing away his shot, and not throwing away his wine either.
So, many people know I'm quite the Hamilton fanatic, and I've seen it an embarrassing number of times. So, let me ask you a few things. Who approached you about auditioning for the role of Eliza?
My first introduction to the material was actually through a reading, not an audition. Yeah. I was in a play off Broadway at the time, a musical called Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812, which if you're a Broadway fan, it went to Broadway a couple of years ago. I did the original off-Broadway production of that. And I had been in that production, and it was at a very small downtown theater called Ars Nova. And Ars Nova had done a lot of work with Lynn and Thomas Kail, the director of Hamilton, on Freestyle of Supreme, which is their improv rap group. And they had been invited through Ars Nova as alums to come see the show, and they saw me in it. And from there, they asked me to participate in a reading that they were doing of Act 2. And in the acting world, for those of you who don't know maybe much about how musicals develop, it really starts with a lot of development work. So that means, readings, a week-long reading, you're learning music, you're sitting around a table, you're singing through the music, you're reading through the script. And that's really so the author, the writer can hear it out loud and see what works, what doesn't work, how things play out. see what music sounds like in different voices and see how they can craft this story by using that time to develop it. So there's different stages of development, but usually just starts out as these small readings, and then eventually you go into a reading of the full musical, and then you eventually go into a workshop where you're on your feet, you're kind of doing a little bit of choreography, a little bit of blocking, and then it sort of goes into what would be maybe an out-of-town run or an off-Broadway production where you actually are rehearsing, and you do performances and all that kind of stuff. So I joined Hamilton just for a reading of Act Two, and at that point it wasn't even finished yet. There was no ending. So
there was no ending. Yes, because I had heard that even when it was at the Public Theater, it was pretty much Act One plus a couple songs, and so
no, it was actually a full production at the Public Theater.
Oh, okay.
But the public produced, because they were going to produce the first production, they also produced those preliminary readings.
I see.
So we did a bunch of readings, sitting down on our feet, and then eventually a production of the public.
Because that was one of my questions, is how do you audition for a role that in a production that doesn't even exist yet? So it's they saw your potential, and then they saw you as potentially Eliza, or do you just go in and then after you've done some readings they say you'll be good at Eliza? How does it work?
Well, it's different. I mean, I think conventionally there's an audition process, and they have enough material that they know what they should be looking for at that point, because they've worked on it, they've developed the material, there's a script, there's music, and you audition, and then there's a callback process, maybe you up against 5 or 10 other people, a smaller group of people, 2 people, and then a final callback, or they would just tell you that you got the job. But for my case, it was more of I started working with them, and then I did a work session. So not as conventional as most processes, but I think it's really about, first and foremost, seeing. I mean, you'll have to ask Tommy or Lynn, why they chose me, because I don't know. But I'm glad they did, and I think it's ultimately about having been on both sides of the audition table. You really want to see if you want to work with this person for 4 weeks plus. That you're not only are you casting the show, but you're putting together an ensemble of people, a team of people that are going to work together, and ultimately, the end goal being to create something bigger than what one of us could accomplish alone. So I think, having been on the other side of the table, I see the importance of needing to build a good group of people, so that at the end of the day, we're storytellers, and it's about having fun. It's about doing important work, but ultimately it's about feeling connected to your community and to humanity. And that starts with having a positive work environment.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, so in line with that, did you have a lot to do with creation of the production? In other words, could you make suggestions? Could you improv, or how much of that give and take was there?
Not a lot of improv. That doesn't happen a whole lot in theater unless you're in a specific kind of, comedic show. When you're developing new shows, it's really about, honoring the material and trying the best that you can to make it work. And I think in getting it on its feet, in rehearsing it, blocking it, putting bodies and minds and hearts to these words, the writer comes to find that certain things work, or certain things work better when they change things based on the actors that they have in front of them. So it's kind of like your job is to explore this uncharted territory. You're a map maker. You're exploring, but you have an obligation to annotate and define for yourself what the track for this character is, because eventually, there's no more changes allowed. That is the track that you've created, and that is what people who step into that role, who are going to be in that production, that specific production, will have to follow. But, you know, eventually Hamilton won't be on Broadway, and people can buy the rights to it and do it anywhere that they want, and they can do their own production of it. And those actors can make their own roadmap. They have the script, they have the music, they have an idea, but, you know, that's where you see really interesting revivals happen on Broadway of shows that were around, you know, 20, 30 years ago, and now we're bringing them back, but we're seeing it through a new light, because ultimately theater is for us. Theater is for, there's the actors, and there's also the audience that it's trying to serve, and the community that it's trying to reach. So you get to see it through new eyes. You get to create a new roadmap.
And
That's actually a very good point that you just brought up, because one thing that I love going to theater, you know, we go to the Paramount here in Seattle, and one of the most eye-opening things to me was when I talked to one of the actors, was like, we're creating a new show for everybody every night, even though it's the same script, the same music, whatever it is. It's that one time that you've got for that audience. So it's amazing how you are able to pour so much into that night after night. What goes into those thoughts, and where along the lines did all of a sudden you realize, wow, we've got something, this Hamilton this is incredible. Do you realize what we're on the forefront of here, everybody? I mean, when did you guys get to that moment?
Well, we really, I mean, I knew from the beginning. I mean, I knew the minute that I knew the minute they invited me into that room and I got to hear some of the music, that it was going to be special. I had already known that it was going to be special because I had already seen a YouTube clip of Lynn performing the first number, Alexander Hamilton, at the White House. And so I knew that, I was like, well, that's awesome. And now it's going to be a whole show. I can't imagine it's anything less than incredible. But the music, truly, you know, hearing it for the first time and getting to be in the room with them, like to not just hear the music on a demo, but to actually get to experience the show for the first time with, you know, Lynn at the piano, and Leslie and I had met for the first time in that reading, and David as well. So, you know, you start to feel how special something can be. And that excitement is, you know, you really can't find it anywhere else, because it's like this gift that you're building and getting ready to launch into the world, and you've been working so hard on it, and there's nothing more satisfying than getting to be a part of that process, like from the very beginning stages all the way until the end.
And you were able to bring in some of your own personal talents that I hear you beatbox, is that right?
I only beatbox because they asked me to beatbox.
Oh.
I had never beatboxed before. I will say that when they asked me to do that, I was very excited, because if you know the show and you pay very close attention to Eliza's track, she is the only character who does not rap. Aside from Mariah, I guess, Mariah Peggy, but everybody else gets to rap.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And, you know, I was okay with that because I had some great songs, but I just wanted to have some fun. And then this beautiful scene came up, and, you know, I think, you know, to what you guys were asking about the development and what your part is in it, I think there was something innately playful about mine and Anthony's friendship that we brought into the blocking and into the room when we were just like messing around. And I think like those kinds of things come very organically when you're working with people who are collaborative and open and just super talented. You know, magical things like that happen, and you just say yes. You're like, you bring it on. Do I want to beatbox? Yes. Have I ever done this before in front of thousands of people? No. That doesn't matter.
Very good. Was that come out early in the production, or was it just kind of like it just kind of showed up?
We were rehearsing. Yeah, we were rehearsing for the production downtown at the Public Theater before we did the production on Broadway.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's where it first showed up. There were a couple of workshops before that, and I'm not sure it made it into that until we sort of got on our feet and we were really playing around with, what this mother-son relationship was. And Anthony, of course, is just so funny, so hard to compete with that guy, but I got the beatbox because of it.
Phillipa, when was the last time that any change was made to the show before you started performing it? Like, is it while you're at the public theatre that there's still ongoing changes? That just didn't quite right. We need to block differently here, or is it once you've got to Broadway because you're in a different theatre that it needs to shift, because obviously it needs to set at some point?
Yeah. So the show freezes, what we call freezing, on opening night or the last preview. So if you notice, you go online and you're buying a ticket to a show and it says previews are December 1st through December 15th. The run is December 16th through January 2nd. So that the preview period means that there are changes happening night to night, because the actors are there during the day rehearsing those changes. And it's really, it's necessary because the audience is the last element to the entire experience, to the entire craft of what you're making. That's the final element to all of it, is having that audience relationship. And sometimes things that you think are going to land don't, and you realize, or you think, oh geez, I don't need that there because they're already feeling a certain way because of something else that I wrote, so I don't need to be redundant here. You start to find economy in your work because you realize there are things that work, there are things that don't, and ultimately, what writers are doing so often is just trying to make the show like a little bit shorter, a little bit more concise, because there's so much. I mean, especially with something like that, there was just so much material and so many things that we wanted to express and touch upon in the play, but ultimately, like, you can't have an audience sitting for 4 hours. So so
we would have. I tell you, we would have. You keep on throwing it at us. We would have taken it.
Right. So opening night, the show is frozen. It will not change from that point. The director and writer usually they go away, and the actors and the stage manager and the crew are the ones who are maintaining and running the show. And sometimes, like, if you're doing a show long enough, some things will sort of change organically, and that's good. And then some things will change that really shouldn't change. Like, someone will be doing a move and then they'll sort of move a little bit stage left, and then they end up really far stage left. And so the stage manager would have to be like, hey, you're really far stage left and the light isn't hitting you anymore. So just move over a little bit, you'll get little notes like that. But that's sort of like what the process is. And
but is it, I was going to say though, is it therefore, because you say normally the director and the writer disappear, but you're there performing every night with the writer, aren't you, with Lin-Manuel Miranda? So I wondered whether or not that was a different experience, because if all of a sudden something happened that hadn't happened before, whether or not he's saying, okay, let's unfreeze this for a moment and see if that could work, or whether or not it's really truly set.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, because he was there, but I don't think we really needed to. There were some nights where we had to change some things because we were missing some people, like there weren't enough swings, and so there were like little things like that. But no, generally it doesn't change after that sort of freeze state. But I think that's healthy. I think there's a level of you could always do more.
It's very interesting because I've heard that after the Hamilton opened again, or I can't remember, I don't know if it's actually opened or it's about to open, but they're in the first song of the second act of What Did I Miss, they're actually restaging it a bit so that Sally plays less a flirtatious role with Jefferson and more of a role that acknowledges the relationship they had as slave owner and slave. And but that was a very deliberate change that I read about recently.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a new change. Then that's new to me. But that's good that I think it's within the realm of possibility that things could change or maybe should change. And that's okay. But I think just generally speaking in the process,
Yeah.
those bigger changes, like different words, different choreography, that stuff generally stays the same. But certainly in terms of your acting choices and how you relate to someone, I think there's always room for that, because especially since you have different actors coming into roles, they take on different interpretations of what that means based on their own experiences, their own artistry, and their own craft that they bring with them to that role. So yeah, it's definitely, there is an openness, I think, to interpretation in those areas.
I think one of the big, huge things that why Hamilton was so appealing as well was the diversity that it brought in that was so needed. Yeah, well, how would you like to talk about that for a moment? Because that was something that was just phenomenal and great, I thought. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the most beautiful thing for me in my own experience was getting to just meet a lot of young people, a lot of young people of color, who saw our show and thought to themselves, "Wow, I see myself up there. I can see myself doing that." And that was really, really powerful. And I think what's important to remember is that the efforts that the show made with the casting, um, I don't think, I don't think you can make a choice like that and think, it's only going to function for here and now in this moment. That something like that has a ripple effect that goes beyond what I will see in my career. It goes beyond, the walls of that theater. It reverberates. And I think I'm just excited to see what the generations of people who grew up with Hamilton will end up creating and doing, and the doors that they want to open for other groups and groups of people and other diverse groups of people to see those stories be told. I'm just grateful that I got to be a part of something that feels like such a door opener for a lot of people. That's really exciting.
now you got to meet President Obama. How many times did he come to the show? And you went to the White House, right?
Yeah, he came to the show. I think, well, he came a couple times, I think. I do remember meeting him once at the show, and meeting Michelle downtown, Mrs. Obama downtown. And we went to the White House during our run there, and up on Broadway. And yeah, it was magical. It was such a shining moment in my memory, because it was so profound to be singing in that hall and seeing, Chris Jackson, who's playing George Washington, sing in front of the current sitting president who was about to leave his presidency, singing one last time in front of this George Washington portrait. It makes you realize that art and stories are powerful, and they make up the fabric of this national identity, and ultimately are such a way for us all to connect with each other, and I think, sit in a room with a stranger and honor the moment together. And it was such a great moment where everything was sort of culminating into one, the history, the importance of it all. And yeah, it was pretty, I'll never forget that day.
That's impressive. Now you went on to a number of other things after Hamilton, Amelie, I believe, and the Parisian Woman, which had nothing to do with Paris, I believe. Is that right?
No.
Very good. And that was quite a different change for you for that one. That was a play, right? It's just a straight out play, not a musical.
Sure. I mean, not really much of a change. I mean, I had done plays for many, many years before that. In fact, that's all I did. So up until a couple of years before that, I was doing these, fully sung through musicals, and that was completely new for me. So getting to do that play and start to dip my toes into some film and TV. It was fun honestly, it was fun just to talk again because I had spent so many years just singing. So I did have a thought to myself, like, can I say words? I still know how to do that without singing.
Dancing around.
How do you stay fit, Phillipa? How do you, with the, not only physically but with your voice, like what sort of things do you do to maintain that? Because we as surgeons, we perhaps don't always look after our health as well as we should, but it's it's a physically demanding job, and as is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mixed bag of a lot of things. I think just general like physical wellness, like getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, eating well. That is like, the basic thing that you should be doing if you're doing 8 shows a week. And then, like having a practice, like a meditation or some sort of ritual that you can ground yourself with. Mental wellness, always very important because you're putting yourself into these imaginary circumstances every night, but your brain and your heart know the difference, but your body doesn't, if you're really putting yourself through that. So it's important to tend to that, as well as just general exercise, keeping your cardio up, keeping limber, doing a little yoga, and tending to your personal life, to your family as well, because I know for surgeons, the hours are a little bit crazy, and sometimes you don't see your families, and sometimes you're on call and you have to go somewhere at the last minute. And that can be really hard to find consistency in your life and to find consistency with your partners and your kids. So I think it's always important to remember, at least from an actor's perspective, and maybe from a surgeon's perspective, it's about creating this downtime. But as an actor, you will have downtime. You will have moments where you're not working, whether you're waiting for a job to start or one job ends and then you don't know what you're going to do next. Most actors go through a period of unemployment or not knowing, what their next paycheck is going to be. That's very common. But in those moments, it's important to remember that you need to tend to your life, because someday you'll be busy again, or you'll figure out how to make yourself busy again. And that is going to take the back seat for a little bit, just because all of your time and energy will be spent, making this thing, making this piece of art, making this play, making this film. So really important to, connect with your loved ones and fill the well, as we like to say, because it's hard, especially in a profession where, you're empathizing with people on a day-to-day basis, and you're literally putting yourself in another person's shoes and trying to say, like, how can I help this person? And that can wear on you. So it's important to really take care of yourself and to be fair with yourself and honest with yourself, and not be too hard on yourself in those moments.
Excellent advice. I hope a lot of our surgeons heard that, because we're very guilty of not taking care of ourselves. So excellent advice. Thank you. Well, very good. Well, this has been wonderful. I've always said that, if I ever met you, I've got to get a selfie. So
it's going to be so small.
That's okay. I'll put it on. I'll send it to everybody in PAPS. They'll all love it.
You can take a screenshot of the.
Yeah.
However.
There we go. Love it. Very good. Well, what's next for you? I mean, obviously this COVID thing has been very difficult for everyone in theater. And so obviously, my plea to everybody out there, please go to things and go and enjoy now that things are opening up. But yeah, what's next for you? What are you doing?
I've spent the past year doing a lot of film and TV. I actually just filmed a show that's out right now on Hulu called Dope Sick, which is about the pharmaceutical industry, and the Sackler family, more specifically, and essentially just follows the opioid crisis in America. So that's what I just did. And then I just filmed an Apple TV show that might come out I don't know, in the spring, hopefully. And in the spring, I'm supposed to do a new musical at the Public Theater called Suffs, Suffs, and it's based on the suffragist movement in America to get the 19th Amendment passed. And
Wow.
it's really good. And yeah, so that's going to happen in the late winter, early spring.
And a little bit of Tic Tac Boom as well with Lynn.
Yeah, I did that last summer. That was really fun. Check that out. A little cameo there. Yeah.
And check out the Ham for Hams. Those are hilarious. If there's like a whole YouTube marathon of those things that you guys did. It's incredible.
That was fun. Yeah, those were good.
Well, very good.
Was anybody, John, were you going to ask the question that we don't know whether you're allowed to answer it, but the end of the show in Hamilton,
Oh,
and the gasp, and the sigh, is where did that come from? Whose idea, and what does it mean?
That came out of, I think it was an organic happening. It was something that I had been playing with, and I think Thomas Cale was said, I think that's right, and maybe we can try and tweak that a little bit. But ultimately, we decided together that the end should be an inhale moment, and not an exhale. This is such a, you're not going to like this answer because there is no answer. It means a lot of things. It meant a lot of things in that moment. But it was a powerful culminating moment. And, whether you take it literally or figuratively, or you think this is Eliza gasping, or these are the actors gasping.
Has it all been a dream? Certainly that's what I've read. Is it all a dream? Is this actually, has this whole thing actually happened?
Well, interesting. Yeah. I mean, open to interpretation. I think ultimately we just wanted to feel like there was a connection made with the audience, and that the motion was sort of outward, sort of outward gesture. And that was what it consistently, after we froze the show, as you all know now, after we froze the show, that was what we decided we consistently wanted to strive for.
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment.
Well, we are out of time. I want to thank my colleagues, Marilyn and Sebastian, for co-moderating this. And Philippa, thank you so much on behalf of the Pacific Association of Pediatric Surgeons as being our 54th meeting Gans speaker. Thank you very much. Congratulations on an amazing career, and it's gonna keep going. You're such a star, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hey. All right, thanks everyone, and we will see you later, and bye for now.